Tacoma TRD Pro Grille and TSS sensor problems. Well, good afternoon everybody and welcome back to the channel. So, did installing the Tacoma TRD Pro Grille cause me to have any TSS sensor problems? You know, I get a lot of questions on the channel about that. Do I have any problems? Does it cause any problems? Do you have to take it in and have it recalibrated? So, first of all, let's take a look. I did install the TRD Pro Grille. This is a genuine TRD Pro Grille from Toyota on the front of my Tacoma. Now, what that involved for me was relocating the camera and relocating the TSS sensor. Now, the sensor, of course, is located normally right here behind the Toyota badge. Not this badge, the OEM grille. So there's normally a Toyota badge there, grille, or emblem I should say, and the TSS sensor's behind it. So you have to take it off and put it down here. Of course, that's to enable you to have the Toyota lettering spelled out here, which I love, by the way. So you do have to move it. Have I had any problems? Well, the short answer is no. I haven't had any trouble at all. It still works just fine. No error codes, no pretty lights on the dash or the gauge cluster or anything like that. Same thing with the camera. The camera I had to relocate. It was down here below, and I moved it up here. I had to relocate the camera itself. So no issues there. So why do people have problems, I guess? You know, there's a few reasons, I think. When you're doing this install, you need to make sure that you follow the instructions, like in my video, to the T, right? Do everything the way you're supposed to do it. Make sure the bracket is oriented properly. Make sure it's screwed down correctly. Make sure that you plug it back in once you get the grill back on and that you have good connections. You know, I've had a couple of people tell me that they put their grill back in and they had a TSS sensor problem. It didn't work. And then they discovered that they forgot to plug it in. Now, that's no fault of the system. I mean, come on, if you forgot to plug it back in, that's on you. So you have to make sure that you do everything as best you can to the letter, to the T. Make sure that you do it properly. Secondly, you know, people have mentioned about taking it in and having it recalibrated. You know, to the best of my knowledge, there is no real recalibration. It's not like they go in the system and tweak some numbers or some settings and things and somehow reconfigure the TSS sensor. I believe that what recalibration means is that they would adjust the angle. In other words, they'd get back behind there and at the points where it's bolted down or screwed on, they would shim it. They would shim it to either point it up a little higher so that it focuses at a different angle, or put it down a little lower so that it focuses at a different angle. That's really what recalibration is all about, in my opinion. Now, you can certainly do that yourself. I mean, if you pay attention, again, the details, if you pay attention to the angle that it is at before you relocate it, in other words, where it is sitting behind the emblem on the grill and how it's oriented, I mean, obviously it points out, and make sure that you achieve that same angle when you put it in. Because all it does, obviously, is shoot out a signal that it reads, and that's it. Now, as far as the garnish goes, you know, I've had people tell me, oh, they didn't get the garnish, you don't need the garnish. That's not true on the TRD Genuine Pro Grille version. You do need the garnish because there's just an open hole there. They don't cover it with anything like they did previously or on the other grills, where it just had the normal mesh there and you kind of had to take that off and then put the garnish in if you wanted it there. So to settle that question, you do need the garnish if you're going with a genuine TRD Pro Grille for the 2020 Tacoma. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, you know, it's not an exact science as far as the orientation of the sensor is. I mean, there's always going to be a built-in tolerance, right? I mean, think about it. When you're going down the road, the front end of your truck is constantly moving. You're going to ride the bumps and stuff, right? I mean, if you're riding bumps and you're going down the road and the truck's bouncing around, that sensor has to be able to accommodate that, right? I mean, if it was set so it's specifically at one point and that's it, it would go off or show a malfunction every time your truck moved, right? So there has to be a tolerance there. Think about if you're going down a hill. Let's say you're traveling in the mountains, I don't know, and you have a relatively steep grade, right? I mean, that sensor's pointing out at relatively level, and then you hit a grade, or if you're off-roading, whatever, you hit a different grade that's more severe and pointing down, or up for that matter. It's not going to be the same as what it would be when the Tacoma is traveling levelly, right? Levelly? I don't even know if that's a word. When it's traveling level. So there is going to be a built-in tolerance, and, you know, changing the orientation or the position of it within the grill shouldn't be severe enough to cause problems. I mean, you are changing it about, probably from center to center about 4 or 5 inches, but still, I don't believe that that's enough. I think that probably most times when people have trouble with it, it's because they haven't put it back in correctly, they haven't connected it correctly, or maybe even put it in upside down. I don't know if you can do that, but I'm sure it's happened. Now, one other thing, one little tip I want to give you guys about installing this or messing with the TSS sensor. You know, recently I put a cold air intake, an S&B cold air intake in the truck. And part of the directions in that were you're supposed to leave the truck disconnected from the battery for at least 2 hours before doing the install. And really for me, that meant before disconnecting the MAV sensor, and that's what this is pertaining to, and then reconnecting and powering up the truck. So 2 hours. Now I think the same thing applies to the TSS sensor. If you're going to be doing this, and I'm going to confess, I did not do this on my install, but if you're concerned about it, I would disconnect the battery, make sure that everything is fully powered down, you know, give it the 2 hours or whatever to completely power off before you mess with that sensor. Or at least don't reconnect it up until 2 hours have passed. It doesn't mean you can't start the install. You know, you disconnect the battery, disconnect the sensor, go ahead, do all the work. If you're like me, it's probably going to take you a couple hours anyway. But give it that amount of time before you power the truck back up once you have the install complete and everything is done. I think that's your best bet if there were to be a possibility of any problems to avoiding them with the TSS sensor. Anyway, I just wanted to get on here, kind of talk about that a little bit. I know the video might be a little long for the topic, but there's a lot of variables involved, so I wanted to make sure I covered everything. For anybody that has had questions out there about this TSS sensor, leave a comment down below. If you've done this mod and had problems with the sensor, what was the resolution? How did you fix it? I'd be curious to know. Also, real quick, if you haven't before and you're interested, check out my other channel. It is RobMotive JT, all about my 2020 Jeep Gladiator. Don't forget to smash that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos, and click that subscribe button on your way out. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. That's right, just